It's Disney's Moana, Chapter 20. Grandma? Moana asked wonderingly. Was she really there? Gramma Tala beamed at her, then leaned forward. Well, you just gonna sit there? Overwhelmed with emotion, Moana scrambled over to her, collapsing against her grandmother. Gramma Tala didn't feel as solid as she used to, as though there was more air under her skin, but Moana still felt warmth spreading through her as her grandmother's arms wrapped around her and her hands brushed through Moana's hair. I tried, Grandma. I couldn't do it, Moana hiccuped, tears welling in her eyes. It's not your fault, Gramma Tala reassured her. I should never have put so much on your shoulders. Gently she brushed away Moana's tears, her fingers soft against Moana's cheeks. If you are ready to go home, I will be with you. With a sad nod, Moana picked up her oar and started to lower it into the ocean, but something stopped her. She stared at the oar. Who would save her island and her people if Moana returned home now? What would become of Motunui? Why do you hesitate? Gramma Tala asked. I don't know. Moana felt overwhelmed by emotions, too many to pinpoint or explain. My love, you have always been different. And I know different. Moana gave a small smile as her grandmother continued. You love the ocean. You love your people. And now look at all you have done because of those two loves. But there is something missing. She peered into her granddaughter's eyes. Do you know who you are? Moana frowned, shaking her head slightly. Hit the drum and listen to the voice inside you. What does it say? Gramma Tala asked. Looking back and forth between her grandmother and the drum, which had miraculously remained intact after their run-in with Te Ka, Moana slowly made her way over to it and knelt down. Her hands hovered before she brought them down. Thump! Who am I? I am a villager from the island of Motunui. I am the daughter of a great chief. I am a girl who loves where I come from, who loves my family, who loves my people. Moana stared up at the stars and at the ocean around her, thinking about her ancestors. She banged the drum again, a little stronger this time. I am a girl who loves the sea. I am a descendant of great voyagers. I am a wayfinder. I am a leader of my people, she declared, banging the drum more forcefully. Nodding, Gramma Tala motioned for her to go on. I am a warrior, Moana added, striking the drum again. I am a girl who has been on a great journey, befriending demigods, battling monsters. I have been changed by what I have done, by what I have learned. She pounded out a deep boom. Moana paused, suddenly realizing she knew what her grandmother was trying to teach her. She took a deep breath, letting all her fears and doubts fall away. There was still more for her to do, more for her to learn. She needed to let go of all expectations for who she should be. She smiled, realizing who she truly was, in every fiber of her being, her heart and her spirit, and accepted herself completely. Banging on the drum, Moana shouted up to the sky, I am Moana! Gramma Tala's smile was wide, and her eyes twinkled with pride. Boom! Moana pounded the drum. Boom! An answering drumbeat came from deep within the ocean, and then a fleet of voyaging canoes burst forth from beneath the waves, the glowing spirits of her ancestors on board. The spectral boats flanked her, spreading out on either side, with her canoe in the lead. Seeing her ancestors all around her sent a tingle of awe through Moana. Their voices sang out, reminding her to be true to herself. She was a wayfinder like them, a warrior and a proud leader. She was Moana, and she belonged exactly where she was, in the prow of her canoe. Moana could see a light far beneath the waves. The heart was down there, waiting for her. Her experiences had shaped her. The people she loved changed her. Her ancestors guided her. But she was more than the sum of those parts. She just had to believe in herself. Glowing brightly, Gramma Tala leaned her forehead against Moana's, lighting up her face. Know who you are, Moana, she whispered fiercely. Always know who you are. Moana glanced at the fathomless waves, then back to her grandmother with a smile. She was ready to claim her destiny. Standing on the bow, she took one last look at Gramma Tala and dove gracefully into the sea. Cool water surrounded her, the darkness complete. Moana pulled herself lower, sensing more than seeing which direction was downward. Far below, a light sparkled, growing brighter and brighter. Kicking her legs in wide arcs, she propelled herself toward it, ignoring the stitch in her side. Her lungs began to squeeze, the pressure of the water building the deeper she went, and her fingers and toes felt numb in the cold, but Moana struggled on, determined to reach the glowing orb. Down and down, she was so close now, just a few more feet. Her lungs felt like they were on fire, burning with the need to take in air. Stretching her fingers out as far as she could, Moana brushed them against the heart of Te Fiti, digging it out of the sandy ocean floor. Turning, she kicked off with a powerful thrust and zoomed toward the surface. Splash! Moana broke through the ceiling of the sea to find the sky a beautiful purple as dawn approached. Her grandmother and the spirits of her ancestors were gone, the waves empty, but Moana smiled down at her fist, where the heart of Te Fiti glowed softly. Climbing back aboard her canoe, Moana secured the heart inside her necklace, then turned to survey the damage to the boat. On closer inspection, she saw the mast could be fixed, the outrigger reassembled. She could do this. She could return the heart herself. She had a plan. I am Moana of Motunui. Aboard my boat, I will sail across the sea and restore the heart of Te Fiti, she proclaimed as she set about putting her boat back together. Bawk, bawk, Hey squawked, bobbing his head up and down. Working steadily as the sky lightened, Moana wove new ropes from coconut threads and sealed the cracks in the hull. She ran her hands over the sail, testing its strength, then tightened a line, swung the boom, and hoisted the sailcloth high. Hey flapped to the top of the mast, the wind ruffling his feathers as it filled the sail. Ready to go, Moana charted the course, lowered her oar, and adjusted the sail, and the boat soared over the waves. As the sun rose over the horizon, Moana sailed through a thin mist. the cool droplets refreshing on her skin. The wind gusted, helping her boat slice quickly through the water and skim over the swells. Looking ahead, Moana spotted the dark, ominous ring of the barrier islands encircling Te Fiti. She knew Te Ka was there somewhere. Moana slowed her boat as she approached, swinging parallel to study the craggy rocks until she found a gap wide enough for her canoe. For all his dim-wittedness, Hei must have recognized the foreboding aura that hung around the area. "Balk?" he squawked tentatively. Moana shot him a reassuring smile. Te Ka can't follow us into the water. We make it past the barrier islands. We make it to Te Fiti, she told him, going over her plan aloud. He stared back at her blankly. None of which you understand because you are a chicken. Picking Hei up, she placed him carefully in a basket where he couldn't wander off into the sea. Next, Moana wrapped one hand around the heart and took a deep breath. Then she pulled the sail line tight, steering toward the gap in the barrier islands. A thick pillar of ash hung over the gap, and there was Te Ka waiting for her. Totally focused, Moana kept the sail tight and her eyes on the gap as they closed closer and closer. Suddenly, she leaned her weight back, counterbalancing the force of the wind, and used her body to flip the boat in the opposite direction, aiming for a different gap. Te Ka's eyes narrowed in anger, and the lava monster raced along the rocks to the other gap, hurling balls of molten lava at Moana to slow her down. Bam! Splash! Moana had to tack frequently, angling the boat back and forth to avoid the lava. Despite the plumes of steam and ash erupting each time the lava collided with the water, Moana was getting closer. Seeing this, Te Ka smashed its fiery hands together, creating a massive, blazing ball, then launched it toward the gap itself. A huge cloud of steam billowed up as the lava crashed down into the water, filling the space and fusing the islands together. The gap was impassable now. The lava monster had blocked the path. But as the steam cleared, Te Ka leaned back in surprise. Moana had disappeared. Whirling, Te Ka spotted Moana's boat almost back to the first gap. She had doubled back. From her place in the stern, Moana grinned, happy her plan was working. Te Ka would never make it back to the first gap in time. But Te Ka wasn't going to give up that easily. The lava monster lunged downward, pushing at the islands themselves. With a tremendous groan of rock against rock, the islands began to move, shifting to close the gap. Huge boulders, dislodged by the force of Te Ka's push, began to rain down, tumbling into the ocean all around Moana. Shoved sideways by the crash of a nearby boulder, Moana lost her grip on the main line. Dismay filled her as the rope flew through the air, but with a quick lunge, Hei grabbed the end of it in his beak. Stunned, Moana stared at the rooster as he tugged the line back to her. The splash of the steaming boulder jarred her back to the present. Yanking on the rope, she sliced through the water, the canoe tilting to take full advantage of the wind, and they were through the gap just in time. Boom! A crag of the island broke off and crashed into the gap, sealing it shut. The resulting wave pushed Moana toward Te Fiti, and she raised her hand in victory. "We did it! Moana cried, then cut off. Where was Hei? Turning, she saw him floundering in the water near the now blocked gap. He must have been knocked off the boat by the rock. "Hey, hey!" Moana called. Despite the fact that she was so close to her goal, the sand of Te Fiti just a few 100 feet away, Moana didn't hesitate. It was her responsibility to take care of him. Swinging the boat around, she rocketed back toward the rooster and plucked him from the waves. With a whoosh of smoke and ash, Te Kā reared up from the islands nearby and smacked the canoe into the air. Moana, Hei, and the boat all flew up, spinning end over end before plunging into the unnaturally warm seawater, heated by proximity to Te Kā's angry form. Her limbs flailing under the water, Moana twisted to find the surface, narrowly avoiding the rocks Te Kā was showering down on her. Gasping, she surfaced, then kicked over to Hei, who was splashing nearby. After plonking him on her head, she pulled herself to her overturned canoe and set a bedraggled Hei on the upside-down hull. Moana took a deep breath, then swam under and tried to pull the mast up to roll the canoe back, but the outrigger provided too much resistance. She couldn't right it that way. Unhooking the sail, she grabbed hold of the mast line, surfaced, and circled to the windward side of the boat. Leaning over the hull of the canoe, she set her feet on its outer edge and used her body weight to tip the boat back toward her slowly, pulling on the line at the same time. Hei scrabbled along next to her as the hull rolled. She was poised halfway up the hull, the mast now resting on the surface of the ocean, when she felt a shadow loom over her. Gazing up, she saw Te Kā, who looked more enraged than ever. Before Moana could fling herself back into the water, Te Kā's fist slammed toward her. There was nothing Moana could do to escape. Squeezing her eyes shut, she braced for the blow,